G'day guys, timer is on. Happy running. I just recorded half an episode and realized that I'd pressed the wrong button. I'd pressed the, I didn't press record. So I've just been talking to myself, which is a shame. But anyway, that's okay. A little bit of practice for what I was going to say. So we're going to get stuck into talking about warm-ups today. This is off the back of the poll that I have on the Step in Injury Prevention Facebook group, where I have a few different topics, and it's a place where you can also put topics to vote on to for me to talk about and go into depth. So the main winners in the poll so far are exercises and common running injuries, which I feel like I've gone into a little bit so far, but I thought I'd go down the list, and Tarash has voted for a bit of information about warm-ups. And I thought it'd be a good one to talk about because it is something that I think a lot of people have like this stress and guilt about not doing these elaborate warm-ups. So I will get into that. But before I do, quick shout out to Jared on the Facebook group, who sent me through some GMT yesterday and had some really kind words to say about the podcast. So yeah, that was just a really nice thing. And not only from the financial side of things, but just getting positive feedback is really nice when I'm sitting in my room, in my place, just talking into the void. It's really nice to see that the listeners are, that you guys are getting something out of it. So I really appreciate that, Jared. It's a bit of a proof of concept of doing something like this, which isn't my, usual business. I own a physio clinic in Sydney and have another physio education business that I work on as well. So it did seem like, going off and doing something separate to those other projects might not be the best choice, but I think there's just so many people out there getting into Step In. I really do think this information is needed. So it's really nice to hear that positive feedback and also get some financial reimbursement for the time I've put into it. So thank you very much, Jared. Absolute legend. So I'll jump into talking about warm-ups today because as I said, like a lot of people have stress and guilt, and it's a really common reason why people think they get injured when they come in and see me as a physio patient. So like the two biggest ones, people are like, oh, I'm not stretching enough, or I'm not warming up enough. And I think that kind of stress is, it's just this like funny cultural thing where that's what people have decided is the main thing, and they don't really take into consideration that it's usually more your training load errors. As I've talked about quite a lot on this podcast already, is usually these injuries that happen in running where you're not in a sport where you're getting tackled or run into or having to change direction really intensely. It's usually these overload injuries where it's a training load error. You do too much too soon, or you don't give yourself adequate recovery for the stress that you're putting on your body, and that's what causes the injury. But people still seem to jump to the idea that it is they haven't stretched enough or they haven't done enough warming up. So warm-ups, they are, I think, important. Like I do encourage, there's a lot of good reasons to warm up, and I do think they're a really good idea. However, I don't say it's an absolute necessity for people, because I know that when you're trying to build up a really sustainable exercise habit, something that you want to do frequently, like time is such a big factor in everyone's life. And unless you're a professional athlete where you're getting, paid to train, and that's your whole, I guess in Step In you are actually getting paid to train, so that's kind of neat. But usually we're sort of fitting it in around our lives, unless you're a real Step In whale who can just do this full time and earn a really great living from it, which if you are, I'm jealous. But a lot of us don't have the time to spend 3 hours a day training, where you get an elaborate warm up and then an elaborate sort of cool down as well. So I think one of the biggest things in like building exercise habit is making it kind of efficient and also enjoyable, and making it really like frictionless to get into your training as well. Because I know that, like for myself, although I absolutely love exercise, I've done it my whole life, and I can't get enough of, like I'll never stop. I do still find that like if I know that I've like got to do a lot before I can kind of get started, it just becomes less and less appealing. So making it as frictionless to get started, I think is really key. And so when people sort of like design these elaborate warm-ups where you've got to spend 10 minutes foam rolling before you move, and then you do another 10 minutes mobility, and then you might be doing like some like neural activation exercises, and then like walking slow jog and then finally getting running. Like if you've spent 45 minutes before you've even got started, then that just ends up being such a big barrier to people that they never like they have the best plan in the world, but it's just not at all like the best plan is not useful if you don't execute it consistently. So my big like recommendation is, unless you really do have heaps of time and you love it, and you like spending all that time doing it, like I would encourage you that the main important thing is consistency and getting that bigger picture training load right and not doing too much too soon. So where warm-ups are really important is that I've talked a bit about energy systems in the nutrition podcast so far, where basically you have different fuel sources that power your cells. So again, fat, you have your aerobic, so that's your fat burning fuel, where your aerobic system, so it's a fairly low intensity stuff. It's what your body's mostly using most of the time. Then you have your glycolytic system, which is where you're actually burning sugar. It's the anaerobic. So aerobic means using oxygen. Anaerobic means like an being not oxygen. So you're burning a different fuel there. So you're using you're basically going on this different pathway where you're using glycogen. Then you also have your phosphocreatine system, which is your immediate energy source. And so it's quite cool when you think about it, because like when most people think like, they know when to do exercise, you need to like burn calories and burn energy, which, everyone knows and it makes sense. But then when you actually think about it, like the fact that if you needed to, you could suddenly just sprint at absolute, like flat out pace as fast as you can for like a decently long time, like a full minute. Like you haven't been preparing your body by like pre-burning all of that fuel to be ready. So like it might seem, I hope people kind of get this, but like to have that fuel available, which is in the form of what's called ATP, you need to have fuel that is burnt to be able to get that going. But your aerobic system, so that fat burning system, is actually kind of like a old school steam train, where you've got to, you see them sitting at the station and then like funneling in all this wood, and then it's like gradually sort of getting going, and then you get that chugga, and then it gradually gets going, and then then they're sort of flying across the countryside, these old steam trains. But it is that initial like stage where you have to actually like start the fire, get the the fuel burning, and then gradually it gets up to its sort of peak energy output. So with the human body, it's really neat that we've got these different systems. So instead of just relying on that aerobic system where, if you suddenly had to like run for your life, you don't have to wait like, oh, excuse me, gotta just start getting my fat burnt like fuel system going and gradually start getting this oxygenation system going, and then a minute later actually be able to use that fuel. What you've got is this immediate energy source, so this phosphocreatine system, where it just like as soon as you need it, you could sprint at your max capacity and burn your like burn at that intense intensity, great words there, Phil. But basically, you have this immediate energy source, which dies out really quickly, but then it's in that time it takes to fade out, you've basically got your glycolytic system, where you're starting to process sugars that are stored both in the muscle and in the liver. And then you've also got sugar in your bloodstream, as most people know. But these stored fuels suddenly like kick into gear, and they get fired up, and then it's like up by the time your aerobic system has warmed up and is in full flow by about a minute of decent intensity exercise, then that's when your glycolytic system starts to the ratio changes where your aerobic system can really take over. But if you are working above that aerobic threshold, which I've talked about before, then you've got a combination of your glycolytic system and your aerobic system going, which is why when you're doing a long event like a triathlon, a marathon, whatever, then that's why you need to be taking on sugar while you're also burning fat at the same time. Anyway, that's a bit of a deep dive into the fueling system. But why I think warming up is really important is, like, I've noticed this a few times where I haven't had much time to get my run in, and I'm at work, and the place where I can run where I don't have to like dodge traffic is basically going out the door, turning right, and then running up this hill that's probably about 300 meters of just like pure uphill. And it's so brutal because I know it's going to suck. There's the timer. But basically, it's exhausting because I don't have, like, if you don't do a warm up where you're basically like doing low intensity and then gradually building up intensity, so that might be like a brisk walk into a slow jog and then getting up to your required intensity, then you basically like, to get my, because I use a runner, so I've got to be like above 8 kilometers an hour, and often it's like a bit dodgy, so I kind of have to ideally be at like the 12 so it just doesn't dip down. Basically, I've got to just like sprint up this hill to start and then just get like punched in the lungs when I sort of have to pay back that immediate energy system back via the aerobic system, and then I'm just gassed for the next kind of minute or so as the systems start to like go into equilibrium, and then I can just have my nice sort of aerobic run. But yeah, that first bit when I haven't had a chance to warm up because of the way that this fueling works, you kind of get into this like oxygen debt pretty quickly. So yeah, one of the main reasons why warming up is great is because it's like you've started that steam train, you're getting it rolling so that you can kind of maintain that intensity that you want from the get-go, instead of feeling absolutely horrible as you use these kind of non-sustainable fuels to get yourself going. So that's one of the big ones, and I probably have to go into this in a future episode because I have run out of time. I'm actually going away this weekend for a triathlon up the coast, about 4 hours in New South Wales in Australia. So I'll try really hard to get the recording in, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but hopefully it will. So see you guys soon.